15,000 subscribers. That's certainly one hell of a way to start 2017. Honestly, at this point, I don't know how many times I can say thank you to all of you for supporting me all this time and showing your love for my videos, but it really does mean the world to me, and each time I reach a new milestone, I'm reminded of how lucky I am to have such wonderful people behind me, and it gives me an excuse to use this clip over and over again. So naturally, celebrations are in order, and Fire Emblem is on the menu once again. Now, last time I did a subscriber special, I did the video that got the most votes in the straw poll. However, the runner-up was a very close second, and I feel that considering how many of you voted for it, it only makes sense to have it as the next special. And oh man, is this going to be special, because not only am I tackling the most overrated Fire Emblem units, but I've also got a good friend to help me out in this one. And here he comes now.
Hey interwebs, JoeyPals here. Allow me to tell you a little bit about myself. I've been playing Pokemon for about the last 10 years, and have gotten highly engrossed in the series, becoming an online simulator competitive battler on Pokemon Online, and topping multiple ladders for multiple tiers, including my personal favorite tier, never used in the process. Pokemon isn't my only source of Nintendo joy, however. I was first introduced to Fire Emblem through Smash Bros., but it wasn't until my college friend Haley was like, "Yo, you should play this," that I decided to give it a chance. Once I did, needless to say, I was hooked. My first game was Awakening, which was huge amounts of fun for me, and the Shepherds currently stand as some of my favorite fictional characters ever. Since then, I've been getting more into the games and have been loving every second of it. So much so that I've logged over 280 hours in my one file of Revelations, trying to get every unit to level 99.
Damn, not even I have the patience to do that. But considering how great some of these characters are in Fire Emblem, I can understand why. That being said, there are plenty of characters throughout the series that get a little too much praise for what they do, either for people overblowing their usefulness as a unit, or overhyping their characters for one reason or another.
Indeed. Sure, units that often get hyped up aren't terrible, in fact most of them are rather good overall, but sometimes they don't deserve nearly as much praise as people give them. These units fall into the dubious category of overrated, and to be honest, I'm kinda scared to say that term because of how fans react to stuff like this. But today, I'm going to combat that fear with my brave sword, and help BLAZINGKNIGHT in tackling these 10 characters' repertoires.
Good to know you have my back, buddy. And remember people, this is just our opinion. We are in no way saying that these characters are bad whatsoever. It's just that we feel they're not the holy grail of Fire Emblem characters like the majority do. Also keep in mind, because Joey and I haven't played every single Fire Emblem game, we're going to be looking at the Western only games and their characters, and we're looking at playable units only and only in their base class, so reclassing is irrelevant here.
Damn. Was really hoping to break out Berserker Percy. Anyway, with all that cleared up, please join BLAZINGKNIGHT and I as we take advantage of the opponents on the stage, smack them with an Astra, and heal our wounds with Life Taker,
as we count down our top 10 overrated Fire Emblem units. Oh, and Joey, be sure to cover all open wounds and leave no scratches unbandaged.
Why is that?
Because when dealing with overrated units and Fire Emblem, the salt is going to be real. Olivia. So I'm starting off a negative Fire Emblem list with something relating to the Dancer class. Man, that takes me back. It's amazing how one's talents can evolve in a year.
You know, BLAZINGKNIGHT, I'm actually pretty gifted in the arts.
Is that so?
Yeah. I sing, I write, I act. But you know the one art form I never really got? Dancing. Especially when dancing with a sword. That being said, this lovely girl seems to know how to shake it and slice it. Such a multitasker she is. Now before all of you start raising your pitchforks, remember that we said overrated, not bad. And to be honest, both BLAZINGKNIGHT and I had difficulty even placing her onto this list.
Indeed. I've always found Olivia to be one of the stronger dancers in the Fire Emblem series, though not exactly on par with these two, and I like her character as well, but often she gets praised as one of the best characters in Awakening, and while certainly good, we have a hard time placing her on that kind of pedestal when talking about Awakening characters.
Olivia is said to be the cream of the crop when it comes to Awakening characters, and part of that reasoning makes sense, as dancers are very useful, if not a bit situational. While giving another unit another turn is always very nice, if the enemy just so happens to break through the defensive line, she is left completely wide open, and this is where Olivia begins to fall apart. Not helping this is that while Olivia might have a 75% growth in HP, 70% in both speed and skill, along with 60% luck, she only has a 25% growth in defense and 20% in resistance, meaning it's along the lines of Oblissi taking a close combat. She can have all the HP she wants, but if a strong enough hit lands in her weak spot, She will die.
Also, keeping in mind that Olivia cannot really defend herself due to only having a 40% growth in strength and having an abysmally low attack when she joins you, and it takes a lot of levels before she can actually hurt someone. In terms of her character, she's overall nice and has good support, especially with Lonku, and her arc about becoming more comfortable around men is simple, but nice, and I think that's the best way to describe her. But nothing about her stands out like crazy or is anything too special. Don't get me wrong, she's a good character and has her moments, but ultimately shallow.
Overall, we like Olivia. Her personality is sweet and innocent, and she does have her uses on the battlefield, but overall she's not exactly top tier when it comes to awakening characters. And the fact that her hype levels are some of the highest for characters in the game, we feel they're far beyond what this should be. Boyd. You know, it's funny. In Vitalia's games, certain units excel in one game but suffer in the other. Since in Path of Radiance, Astrid is great but kind of meh in Radiant Dawn, and Har is great in Radiant Dawn, but not all that amazing in Path of Radiance. Man, 3 years between games can really make or break people. It certainly did wonders for Soph and Alencia.
It certainly did, and Boyd is very much the same situation, since in Path of Radiance he's definitely good, but in Radiant Dawn, while still decent, he is noticeably worse and pales in comparison to not only other units, but other warriors too. Don't get me wrong, he's a good warrior and a decent character, but when I hear people claiming to be the best warrior in the series when compared to the likes of Nolan, Garcia, Bast and Charlotte, it's at times like this I have to quote the man himself Chorus and say, I disagree!
As do I, buddy. As a warrior, for his stats in Radiant Dawn, he fits the model almost perfectly, sporting 80% growth in HP and 65% in attack. Yet his below average speed, skill, luck, and 10% in resistance aren't helping him at all. Boyd seems very capable on the battlefield regardless, and for the most part he is, and to his credit he can be useful in Part 3. However, during Part 4 and the later chapters, Boyd begins to suffer due to his lower stats and growth rates, and the fact that there are other units who can do his job better.
That's very much how it went for me, since not only was Nolan a better warrior, but I found both Gatry and Titania were more capable at doing Boyd's job than he was, so ultimately, while good, he fails to stick out, and in a game like Radiant Dawn, you need units that stick out. On top of that, Boyd is not the most interesting or deep character, since he's very much the typical rival character for Ike and does his best to show how he is superior to everyone without thinking things through first, though he's got good support and ultimately he does mean well, and he has a good heart at the end of the day.
That sounds strangely familiar to a certain other warrior.
I guess it comes with the territory.
Well, not bad at all. Boyd, or more specifically Radiant Dawn's version of Boyd, isn't the most outstanding character or most opponent unit either. Good? Yeah, sure. Great? No. And the best warrior in the Fire Emblem series, in our eyes, most definitely not. Canis. This is definitely going to pour on the salt, since many people love this guy and say he's essential for his game. I personally want to go that far, but he's certainly a strong unit, and he has a good character too. Just maybe not as standout as people say he is.
I think it's because he's the only Dark Mage in Blazing Sword, so I can imagine for most fans, he was the first Dark Mage they got to use, and probably saw him as a one-of-a-kind class like no other and in his own league, though later games will prove otherwise. Don't get us wrong, Canis is a good character, and he's most certainly a strong Dark Mage. However, we feel there are stronger Dark Mages from both a gameplay and a character perspective, and that he's mostly overblown due to the fact that there are no other Dark Mages in Blazing Sword. If that was the case, I can't imagine how popular Faja would be if she was the only Dark Mage in Awakening. Her popularity would pierce through the roof.
Fuck the roof. She'd pierce through the heavens harder than Effie hits priestesses and become the most popular Fire Emblem character of all time.
Well, at least we know who'd be confirmed for the next Smash game. Just by looking at him, you can tell that Canis is quite the intellectual, and his character very much fits that description, as he is obsessed with learning as much as he can and his curiosity knows no bounds. This does lead him to have some interesting supportive characters like Pent and Ranalt, exploring more of his backstory and having some interesting discussions, along with his supports with Nino, addressing his selfishness and being too absorbed with his learning. So overall, Canis' character is good. Not great or amazing, but good.
In terms of being a unit, Canis may look like your typical Dark Mage. However, his growths are strangely lacking, since while sporting high HP growths and 45% in magic and resistance, he's only got 40% in skill, 35% in speed, and 25% in defense and luck. While these stats aren't exactly great, Canis can be overall good, and his Dark Tome spells are very potent, so he's certainly got an edge over other units. When you look at Dark Mages as a whole though, he's certainly outclassed by more potent Dark Mages, such as Farja, Ophelia, and my favorite blood-showering, crow-loving character, Henry.
I can certainly understand why people like Canis, since he is a good character and a good unit, but he really isn't the best Dark Mage when looking at the series as a whole, and I think people are slightly biased because he was the only one available in Blazing Sword and they're overblowing him as a result. As for us, we feel Canis is very much like Fire Emblem Fate's Birthright. Good, but not great.
Odin. Now that we've covered the old, let's talk about the recycled. Odin is a returning character from Fire Emblem Fates, along with Ladies Man and Sundari Bitch over here, who started as a Myrmidon back in Awakening under the name Owain. Now personally, Owain was the one character I was glad to see back. After all, I was pretty excited to see my lovable miscreant back in action. Unfortunately for me though, I realized just how quickly his personality wore thin, and his Fates self simply didn't have the stamina to back up all that aching blood.
Well, that's certainly going to piss off the fanboys, but I feel Joey's got a point. Since while in regards to Awakening, I feel Owain deserves all the praise he gets and is one of my favourite characters in that game. Fates on the other hand didn't fare so well for Odin, since he became a rather meh unit in all honesty, yet so many people claim him to be one of the best characters and units in the game. Really? Well, I guess you people are seeing something we're not.
Between Awakening and Fates, not much has changed about Odin, and he's still just as over the top and self-absorbed as he was before. Though some of his new quotes, especially the ones about his unquenchable blood flames, are pretty damn funny.
While this is nice and all, it shows just how little he's changed between games. I mean, both Selena and Laszlo have at the very least grown as characters, and you can see that through their supports. Odin, however, is pretty much the same as he was in Awakening, making him somewhat shallow when compared to the other two, and most of his dialogue feels like it's just on repeat from the last game. And don't get me wrong, what he says is good stuff, but it's largely the same and does kind of wear out its welcome.
As a unit, Odin has dropped his sword arm and instead found his calling in the dark arts, and his growth rates are rather mixed, so he overall is rather balanced. However, balanced units aren't exactly best suited for conquest. Having a team in Fire Emblem isn't like Pokemon, where all your Pokemon need to cover multiple avenues. Instead, you need a team filled with specialists in order to get the job done. Odin is an overall pretty solid unit, but he fails to really stand out or be especially potent, which is fine in most Fire Emblem games, but in Conquest is a death sentence.
Not helping this is that his speed, defense and resistance growths are below average, and none of his growths go over 60%. While Odin may seem fine at first, the further you go into Conquest, the more you notice just how lackluster he can be, and it really bites you in the arse.
Anywho, Odin is a pretty fun character, and it's easy to see why he's got such a following. However, we feel that while his Awakening performance is deserving of that recognition, his role in Fates isn't as deserving, and the fact that he's one of the most hyped and beloved characters from that game alone has both of us scratching our heads. I bet the fanboys' blood are boiling more than Odin's blood right now.
You know, I could prescribe something for that after the amount of people I've pissed off.
Oh, I believe it. Hinata/Hisame. When it comes to children, the saying often goes that the child will often surpass the parents. Fire Emblem is certainly no exception to the rule, since almost all of the children surpass the parents in almost every aspect.
I think you might be overselling it a bit there, dude. Last time I checked, Brady wasn't exactly on par with Maribel.
I said almost. Lawrence is still bad, Yarn is laughable, and Mitama is...
awesome!
Let's go with interesting. Yet these two characters, Hinata and Hisame, simply won't work no matter how much IV breeding you do.
That's actually a very accurate analogy. Yes, coming in at number 6 we have both Hinata and Hisame. Two characters that are both incredibly underwhelming units and very one-note characters, that while not bad per se, we'd be hard-pressed to call good. Which makes it all the more baffling as to why we see many claiming Hinata and Hisame to be one of the best units in Birthright and Child units respectively.
It's a shame too, because these were two characters I genuinely wanted to like, but simply couldn't because of how abysmally one performs. That performance is genetically passed down to make a son almost as inferior. So we decided to put both of them on here. Like father, like son, they say. Hinata was actually one of the characters I was looking forward to using the most, due to his very welcoming personality and, let's be honest, that hair.
Despite his welcoming personality, Hinata is one of the most generic units in Birthright, and that's really saying something. Since this guy has a very one-note personality which can be enjoyable at times, but it's nothing we haven't seen before, and it feels a lot like one of those cliche anime best friend rival characters, and though his supports paint him to be a nice guy, that's pretty much all there is to him.
As a unit, I was quickly let down by how underwhelming Hinata was. as the sword-wielding swaddler became outclassed by Hannah upon arrival, and considering I really don't like Hannah, that's hard for me to say. Like with Odin, Hinata is a physically balanced unit, which for birthright isn't a problem. The problem being, however, that Hinata can't do much value compared to just about everyone else, and genetically passes down the suckiness.
Hinata does well in HP, luck, strength and defense. While that's fine, what really cuts him down is everything being 40% or lower, especially his 35% speed while sporting 25% resistance, meaning he'll get doubled a lot and crumble before any magic users. Hisame is not much better. While his performance is slightly better than his father, he's still a rather meh unit, and for a child unit he downright sucks, as none of his base growth exceeds 50% and he doesn't excel in any particular area of battle.
Hisame is also even more generic than his father, having a much duller personality and being that typical stick-of-a-mud loner with no sense of humor and wants to do everything by himself. Christ, the anime tropes are starting to become downright painful. In fact, the only thing stand out about him is his pickle obsession, and apparently that counts as a striking personality?
I fail to see the connection.
Same here. I mean, who needs depth when you've got pickles?
And people say Azura has no personality. In the end, both of these two are just such meh units and some of the most forgettable characters in Fates. They're not bad units per se, but Joey and I agree that they barely scrape by as being decent, and we feel the praise these two get is very overblown. Gaius. And thus begins our slow descent into hell, since the next 5 characters are going to get us more hate than choosing Mei in Overwatch, with Gaius being just the tip of the iceberg.
I thought you'd be used to this?
I am, but are you?
I thought so, but as we keep going down, I really don't know. But yes, coming in at number 5 today is Gaius, otherwise known as Winnie the Pooh meets Robin Hood.
That's an interesting comparison to say the least.
Anyway, Gaius is a rather fickle character, and he's one of those units that you can recruit on a map, but honestly, I really wasn't interested in him, because his whole thing was not wanting to go as far as he did in his mission. That was probably as clear as day. And the fact that, while certainly good, he's not exactly the best thief in Fire Emblem.
Gaius, despite being a thief, is a very calm and collected person, and has acted selflessly on many occasions and thinks of others instead of himself. Guess he's Fire Emblem's answer to Robin Hood.
Nope, we already got that.
Gaius doesn't have much in the way of depth despite some overall good supports, and much like Olivia, his character is nice, but ultimately shallow, as well as being kind of one note due to his obsession with sweets.
Gaius can be summed up in one sentence. He will do anything for candy. Want him to do your laundry? Give him a Reese's. Complete Chapter 10 in Conquest on Lunatic? Give him a Hershey Kisses. Bastardize his mediocre character forever by being the son of a ninja and fates for absolutely no reason? Give him a gummy bear.
So that explains it! Gaius, you filthy whore!
Gaius is a rather interesting team member in terms of performance due to his very high HP, strength, skill, and speed growth rates. However, he has bad defense, resistance, and luck, making him a sugar-coated glass cannon, which for a thief is okay, but there are many other units who perform better as glass cannons, and the very second someone manages to land a hit on him, he's pretty much a goner. In my experience, I never seemed to do any damage that mattered with him, but hey, stats don't lie.
Guess you just got RNG screwed, but to be honest, that's the same case for me. Gaius never really became someone who did a significant amount of damage, and his low luck often shot himself in the foot. On top of that, he can easily be replaced by Anna, who is just a million times better than him. I mean, yeah, she's a slightly overblown character, but she can at least back it up by being awesome in combat and what I feel to be a more entertaining character.
Ultimately, Gaius is a character whose personality is very hit or miss. Some, like my friend Haley, adore him, while I personally can't stand him. Yes, he has his own charm and usefulness, but ultimately failed to impress us, on top of all the negatives in place with his egocentric, fructose-orbiting personality, which lands Asugi the number 5 spot.
Don't you mean Gaius?
But Asugi is the same person, even though they're technically different, yet his name is just... Ugh! I don't know anymore!
Caden. Man, there are a lot of Birthright units that we find to be overrated, aren't there? That's not to say we don't like the Birthright characters, but damn do the fanboys overblow how good they are, and oh my does Caden ever get overblown. Since while Caden's good, he's pretty one note as far as characters go, even for Birthright standards. And as a unit, he's again good, but not one of the best in Birthright, and especially not Fates as a whole, yet many regard him as one of the best in the game. I guess people have a soft spot for Foxmen with fabulous tails.
I guess so. In fact, I guess you could say he looks... foxy? Caden is a fox who fancies himself to be even more fashionable than a Boro, and is very much involved in his own looks. As such, he's rather childish and quite narcissistic, since he pretty much spends most of his time grooming his tail and likes to tease people whenever he converses with them. Ultimately, Caden is rather simple, and not a very interesting character. Heck, Max from Pokemon anime is funnier. Though he has a good heart and likes doing favors for those he is indebted to. Well, he certainly didn't do me any favors, and that's mainly due to his performance in combats.
Preaching to the choir, dude. Caden as his base class supports good HP, strength, speed, luck and resistance, while having poor skill, magic and defense. Now for the most part that's fine, and Caden will certainly be useful for a good number of chapters. However, I find that once you start squaring off against the advanced units, Caden kind of fell flat on his face, since while he remained very fast, he often didn't have enough strength to deal the damage to the bulkier units, and his low defense made him otherwise susceptible to just about any enemy who attacked him.
Also, I'd like to point out that while we're not focusing on reclassing units, I have to point out that Caden's reclasses don't do him a damn thing. His secondary class line is the Diviner class, which gives access to Onmyoji and Basara. Onmyoji ends up being absolutely useless to him outside of rally magic because his magic stat is absolute ass. And while Basara is better and gives him access to Rend Heaven, keep in mind he'll be starting with an E-level spear, which means Caden won't be doing any damage. Caden is certainly a likable guy, but not to the tune many fans saying about him once you look at the facts. As a result, he lands the number 4 spots.
I guess this fox was off his game.
You know, you're really not helping win over fans by saying stuff like that.
Oh please, after the next entry is revealed, we're gonna get so much hate this side of the Federation Force trailer.
Damn, that bad, huh? And who's number 3?
Severa.
Oh shit, here we go.
That's right fanboys, your favourite Tsundere Raifu is one of our most overrated units. I bet you've all got your rocket launchers at the ready. Well, let us first assure you that we don't hate Severa. We just don't find it to be that great whether she's in Fates or Awakening.
Oh man, this is not gonna end well. When it comes to recycled subjects, people tend to look at them with a glazed over expression. And when you recycle characters enough, that truly is Severa.
You're making it worse!
I can't help but make the pun, I'm sorry! In Severa's defense, I certainly do get the appeal, as in both games she has some very standout aspects about both her personality and her use in combat, so some of her praise is warranted. But with that being said, she also has many things going against her. And the fact that she's so high up on many people's best Fire Emblem characters ever lists is something BLAZINGKNIGHT and I can't really get behind. But you people have every right to like her as much as you want, even though we feel differently.
In Awakening, Severa was one of my least favourite characters for one reason: tsundere. This is pretty much Severa's entire character, and my god does she play up the stereotype to a ridiculous level, using all the cliches in the book and most of her dialogue is her acting like a total bitch. I mean, it's bad enough that I'm not a fan of tsunderes to begin with a few exceptions, but the fact that she's literally the worst kind of tsundere just makes her insufferable in my eyes.
Severa is most certainly over the top when it comes to her personality in Awakening. Fates, however, was a complete 180, since she really matured as a character and has grown significantly, becoming more understanding and patient, but at the same time not abandoning her tsundere roots, just dialing them back a bit. With this, you feel a real sense of strength from her, and in Fates she has some really strong supports. In fact, she may have some of the best in the game, so while unlike in Awakening, Fates definitely fixed her up. When it comes to gameplay in Awakening, Severa is unquestionably one of the best child units in the game, and she deserves praise for that. Thanks to her class and balanced base stats and growth rates, Severa is a very solid unit that tends to do well regardless of her parent. So if you pass some really strong skills, Severa can easily be one of the best units in the game. How she fares in Fates, however? Well, let's just say her personality wasn't the only thing that got a 180 spin.
I'll just come out and say it. From my experience, Severa was the worst unit in Fire Emblem Fates. I'm sorry, but she really was. No matter how hard I tried, she just couldn't do anything and was constantly underperforming. In fact, it's a miracle she made it past chapter 17 of Conquest, she was so bad. Severa still remains a mercenary, and her growths are generally balanced, though her speed is quite high, making her an overall decent unit, but much like Odin, she didn't excel at anything, and not once did she have an easy time against the enemy. I mean, there are other shitty units in Fates too, but they at least had their moments, which is more than I can say for Severa.
At this point, we've made it clear why we feel Severa is overrated. since while she has many positives in both games, she also has many negatives. And as a character, we both feel is rather If you like Saburo, that's fine, you have every right to. Just try to understand that we don't feel the same way, and as a result, she needs to take number 3 today.
Arthur. They say justice is blind. Well, if that's the case, the fanbase are clearly blinded by Arthur's sense of justice, because I have not seen a more overblown and overhyped character in any Fire Emblem game as much as Arthur. With the exception of one, but we'll get to that soon enough.
Damn, this is gonna be a hard one. I mean, I love his kid because of another character his voice actor did, but this man, everyone is in love with him, and for the life of us, we don't know why? What the hell did he do to deserve this amount of praise? This is the same man that, before getting the bad guy, would fall down a flight of stairs, stub his toe walking down the street, trip over a black cat that's staring into a mirror that he cracks into, and miss a 98% attack against a win while having a weapon advantage.
That happened to me twice, you know.
What? Seriously?
Yep, base RNG is kinda bullshit. The best way to describe Arthur is that he is what happened if a superhero existed in Fire Emblem, since his entire character is based around being a hero of justice, fighting for the weak, never running away from a fight, and constantly having a worst case of luck this side of Quan from Fire Emblem 4. As such, Arthur is a very over-the-top character, and most of his dialogue is him sprouting heroic catchphrases and acting like an utter doofus when he screws up.
This is where most of the appeal comes in, since fans tend to love Arthur for his crazy antics and one-liners. While personally I'm not a fan of his character, at the very least he is entertaining at times, and some of his supports are very heartfelt, but he's easily one of the most shallow and one-note characters in the game, and both of us find his acting to wear thin after a while. Speaking of wearing thin, Arthur as a unit is actually pretty decent in the beginning, and will be useful for the first couple of chapters, since stat-wise, Arthur excels mostly in HP, attack, and skill, along with decent speed and defense to round him out, so he can deal a good amount of damage and tank some physical attacks. Blazing Knight? What exactly sucks about him again?
Well, first off, his resistance sucks, and his luck is even worse. Which, while it does suit his character, it means his accuracy is just dreadful, enemies can easily crit him, and mages will walk right through him, and that's not something you want in Fire Emblem. Secondly is that while he's good at first, the moment Baruka and Charlotte enter the scene, Arthur becomes redundant, since I find both of them to do better as axe users, and their stats and growth rates make them ideal units for conquest, putting Arthur out of a job.
Long story short, Arthur is pretty much a one-trick pony, since while his personality is fun and he can be potent early on, his novelty wears thin quickly, and he is not the demigod people have made him out to be.
And he's certainly not one of the best units in conquest, like seriously, he doesn't even come close.
That being said, there's still some justice left for you in this world, Arthur, as we still need to move into our number 1 entry. Kazama.
Aw, fuck, not this guy.
Yeah, this guy. You know how throughout this list we've talked about many types of characters. We've talked about balanced units, retainers, and those with absolutely bizarre personalities. These qualities are not bad by any regards, but they do seem to feed into the term overrated. However, what do we get when we mix all those attributes into a squinty eye, healing, sonic-haired package?
Brock from Pokemon?
No. I was gonna say Kazama, but now that you mention it, I think you're onto something here.
Regardless, Kazama is to us the most overrated character in the Fire Emblem series. While yes, he's not a bad character, he has some uses in battle, and I can see why people would like this guy. The amount of hype and praise this guy gets is beyond ridiculous, and there are so many things that Joey and I don't like about him that it's honestly baffling that so many people love this guy. I mean, at the end of the day, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. We just can't seem to understand the masses.
The main thing we feel makes him overrated is his demeanor. There's something about his holier-than-thou attitude that's very dividing, with the player base almost entirely loving or hating Kazama due to his cockiness and his cynical nature, with the rest of us not really being able to stand this guy. Kazama is the type of man that would have walked up to a Fire Emblem newbie and said, "Hey kid, playing Fire Emblem for the first time? Here's a copy of Radiant Dawn. Gonna start you on hard. Try not to fuck it up even though failure is inevitable and all of life is predetermined." Yeah, he's that guy, and he's not shy about it whatsoever.
Putting it bluntly, Kazama is a troll, and pretty much most of his dialogue and supports are just him trolling people. Granted, there are moments where he shines, I'll give him that, but they are few and far between. Not helping this is that, like how I'm not a fan of tsundere type characters, I hate troll characters even more, and god damn it, Kazama just rubs me the wrong way. And the worst part is, he's probably proud of it. Fucker.
As a unit, Kazama is unique in being the only playable monk in the game and promotes into the rare Great Master class, not to be confused with Robin's Grandmaster. Funnily enough, Grandmaster is a class very suiting of Kazama, as he has a 55% growth in strength and HP, while sporting good luck and speed, so he can deal some decent damage and isn't too shabby at tanking hits either. However, this is only when he promotes, since as just a monk, Kazama falls short since his lowest stats and growth rates are in magic and resistance.
So wait, he's a healer who fails at magic and resistance. How does that even make sense? Well, because these stats are so low, Kazama is easily outclassed by Sakura, Felicia and or Jacob before promotion, and even though he gets better once he promotes, he still has to get over starting with E-rank lance weapons, and other units like Rinko and Saburo are way better at being tanks. So ultimately, while Kazama hits the middle ground between the two and has a niche of his own, I find it to be all for naught at the end of the day. And there you have it. Kazama is to us the most overrated unit in the Fire Emblem series.
Overall, we feel Kazama is given far more credit than he deserves. He does have his uses, we won't deny that, but he still has his shortcomings, and ultimately it's his personality alone that we feel hurts him the most, despite it carrying his reputation far over the top into the god tier of Fire Emblem fans.
As such, Kazama takes the #1 spot as the most overrated character in the Fire Emblem series. This has been BLAZINGKNIGHT.
And this has been JoeyPals.
We wish you all a great night, take care, and thank you all very much for helping me reach 15,000 subscribers. And also thank you very much to Joey for joining me in this collab. It was great fun to work with you, buddy, and I'm glad you could be a part of this milestone.
I had a blast working with you too, and thank you so much for inviting me. If you ever need a Pokemon Master who knows how to wield a sword this side of Renee again, let me know. I have no doubt I'll return in one way or another. Hint, hint.
God, you are just so subtle. Anyway, in the meantime, be sure to check out my last video, Will I Get a Nintendo Switch? Also, don't forget to check out JoeyPals' channel if you're into Fire Emblem, and especially for all you Pokemon fans out there, he does some great stuff. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at BLAZINGKNIGHT50 and at JoeyPals, and also don't forget to follow me on Amino to see posts and lists not featured on my channel, or just have a friendly chat with me. Anyway, that's it from me. I'll see you all next time.